Welcome to Six-Sided Discs course preview of Roger A. Reynolds Municipal Park Disc Golf Course in Hilliard, Ohio, ahead of the Cap City Amateur Open, driven by Innova, an amateur-only B tier on July 31st and August 1st. The course has both long and short tees. The short tees will be played by all divisions, par 56, 4,400 feet, and the long tees by MA1, a par 59, just over 6,000 feet. Six-sided discs will be on site at Tournament Central both days over the weekend with all your favorite discs, accessories, bags, chalked bags, much more. We got tons of cool minis. I can't wait to see you there. Stop by and see us. And if all your favorite stuff wasn't enough, we also have a raffle going on for a Discmania Simon Lizotte Meta Tilt, $1 per ticket. Come by either day and pick up some tickets. We'll be drawing the winner Sunday evening. We begin at hole 1, a par 3, 422 feet from the long tee here. We've got OB gravel path and beyond on the right side of the fairway. There will also be a painted line and OB water behind the basket. Strong headwind during our practice round here. Bill's disc kind of turned over into a roller there, but didn't end up in a terrible spot right in the middle of the fairway. But if you don't get it to cut roll like this, then you're going to end up well out of bounds, and that's in a rough position from the long tee. Here we are at the short tee, 287 feet. You can see that out of bounds path comes in closer to the basket, further down the fairway. And Rich is going to show us the way on this one. He hangs it out close to the path, but gets a really nice fade in. And that's going to tuck in just next to the tree there. That's a great shot. This is a pretty common landing zone for the long tee. Leaves you with a short approach to the basket. That's a good upshot there from Bill. And this is also a common landing zone for the short tee, where we've got to kind of deal with these low branches just outside circle. Hilliard's a very open, flat course when you're outside of the wooded holes, and it can be very windy. So, a lot of times you'll be throwing from a sort of protected position and you won't feel the wind. That's very true of this hole as well. So see if you can get a wind read off of other players on your card. Moving on to hole 2. Long is 304 feet. You've got out of bounds water left of the pin and out of bounds road on the right, but neither of the gravel paths are out of bounds, including the one right next to the basket. We're going to see Bill rip on his Ballista Pro here. He gets a great little skip and roll on the gravel path and is just beyond the basket. That's a great shot. From the short tee, it's pretty much the same shot. I think the biggest mistake that you can make here is grip locking over the road, which is maybe a little bit better than ending up in the water. Of course, the water, you're going to be possibly a little bit closer to the basket. And that one just came in a little too hot and finds that water next to the basket. I'm going to be going for an overstable mid-range here, a Malta. And again, hang it over the road a little bit. And this one kind of catches an invisible tree I didn't think was in that line, but turned out okay. There's a lot of water on the Hilliard course. I would strongly recommend bringing a retriever or at least having one from someone on your card. Conveniently, Six-Sided Discs will have some retrievers with us available for sale at Tournament Central. Good recovery putt there from Rich. Again, this gravel path is not out of bounds, so this is actually a nice spot to be. That's a great little birdie from the long tee for Bill, and a birdie from the short tee for me. Moving on to hole 3, par 3, long tee is 300 feet. You got a out of bounds road on the left, out of bounds path on the right. If you fail to land in bounds, you're going to this drop zone here at the short tee. So you're only advancing about 50 feet or so. And Bill's going to show us a couple routes here. This first one's a little bit inside. Safer shot. Does land in bounds, but, you know, that still leaves a challenging upshot to try and salvage a par. And this is the sort of hyper-aggressive play from back here. This is hanging it out of bounds the whole way and just fades in bounds, but that's also long, even though it's in bounds, and a really challenging position to be in. Same out of bounds apply here from the short tee, though you don't go to the drop zone. I believe you play it from where you crossed. Big thanks again to Jesse and the tournament staff for getting us the caddy guide. We appreciate that. First shot there was an MD3 down the middle, just a little too high, caught some branches, but it will have a putt. And the more aggressive play is an overstable forehand over the road, or of course lefty backhand. And that's not a bad play. And here we see Bill's kind of aggressive shot went a little bit long, and there's this really big bush right behind the basket that protects anything that goes long from really getting to the basket. So you're really the best you can do here is exactly what Bill does, just catches a branch, drops down right next to the basket for a par, move on and try and get your score on another hole. This from my first shot with the MD3, and even, you know, just outside circle, very little to work with in terms of putting. You can really be quite obstructed with these trees on the green. Hilliard is a very cart-friendly course, so if you do have a cart, I would recommend bringing it. It's an easy walk, not a lot of elevation. Here we are, hole 4, par 3, long tees 307 through this little gap. There's a little channel that runs through it that is in bounds, and the basket is off to the left. But it is an extremely challenging shot. Low ceiling. Maybe you could flex something over the top here. Bill's going to try and just punch it down the middle into the fairway. But it gets hung up by that guardian tree and lands in the brush there. And it's really tricky to find discs down in there. Back here at the short tee, 249 feet, we've got out of bounds blacktop beyond the pin. That shouldn't come into play unless you really juice it long. I'm going with a Malta again. Just down the middle, split a couple trees, and that'll slide up within about 15 to 20 feet. And Bill kind of showing you, I think, the common mistake here to just leave it a little bit left and kind of chop your way through the rough on that left side can make it a really, really challenging hole. Moving on to hole 5, again from the long tee, 306 feet. Just 245 from the short, off to your right there. And this first shot just gets the wind under it, and that is fading far, far, far left of the pin. The pin is really straight ahead above that blue trash can. This is much better. Bill gets a little bit of turn on this one, and I think it's going to kick to the right a little bit there as well, and that's a good shot. That should be putting. From the short tee, I think you got two routes here. A backhand turnover, if you're a right-handed player, is going to turn nicely down into that little you can't really see the basket, it's so dark back in there, but a forehand is also a good play if you can hang it out far enough to the left and just let it fade in towards the basket. But the mistake is to early release it like I did, and that's going to fight quite a ways into the rough and leave me with very little, as you can see right here. Just trying to pitch over to get a putt for par. And this is another shot that I threw and ended up similar position to where Bill was, that, you know, best case scenario, you've got a little flick roller to get back over to the basket. These are some very, very protected greens on a few of the holes, especially in the woods. And that was actually a good up from Bill as well. And even if you're within 10 feet, there's still tons of trees to contend with. So practice your straddle putt before you come if you need to get out and around some obstacles. On to hole 6, par 3. Long tee, 211 feet. You're aiming for this gap in the trees, and you're hoping to turn your disc through that gap. Here's the reverse angle, and you've got a very small area to land in because this path behind the basket is the path itself is inbounds. There will be a painted line to show out of bounds beyond it. Bill's going to show you the way here. And he does end up inbounds and in a pretty good spot there to go for a birdie. This is your view from the short tee, 190 feet. There's that out of bounds path. And I struggled with this one a little bit. I'm going to try 2 different shots. The first, an overstable forehand with a streamlined flare. I sort of figured it was overstable enough that it wouldn't get beyond the path. But I was wrong. So that would be out of bounds long. And then a putter turnover that I threw way too far to the left, flexes out, does get inbounds, but leaves me with about a 50-foot putt or so. Yeah. The fact that the path is inbounds gives you a little bit more room to work with, but I didn't really throw a good shot on this hole. I think laying up to the corner with just an easy putter or mid-range shot would give you a really, really easy look at a birdie. I think I overcomplicated it a little bit for myself. That's a really nice birdie from Bill there. Moving on to hole 7, par 3 from the long tee, 319 feet. It's going to bend right around these trees, past a little bunker of trees and mulch. Play from the long tee is probably a forehand if you're a right-handed player. And Bill doesn't throw a lot of forehands, but this is a really nice one just to get in the fairway. If you throw something a little bit straighter and more overstable, you could get a good skip to be putting. And this is a common mistake here, going for the backhand turnover. When you get around this corner, there's some crosswind a lot of times coming from the right, and it is just never going to let your disc turn around that corner. And you end up out of bounds beyond the road. Here from the short tee, you can also see the out of bounds driveway behind the basket. And I'm going to try out a couple of shots here. First, I'm going to go with an Emerson Keith Latitude 64 OptoX Explorer. Nice and overstable. A lot of airspace there on the right, and I think that's the ideal play, and that one's just about 7 feet away. And then I'm also field testing a Meta Tilt, which is looking spiffy, and I'm going to try a thumber here. And I tested this the other day, and I learned something really interesting about the Tilt, which is that it doesn't flip over when you throw a thumber. I mean, look at this thing. It stays completely vertical and essentially turns into a sky roller, hits the ground, and that's actually going to finish pin high, maybe 20 feet to the right. Crazy disc. Gives you some crazy shots. Wow. Here from Bill's forehand shot. He's just got a little pitch up there and sneaks it through the branches. He'll be putting for par, and par is not a bad score at all from the long tee, unless you've got a really, really big forehand or you have lefty backhand to pump it out there. On the other hand, from the short tee, you probably should be scoring there. Meanwhile, hole 8, no out of bounds here, and long tee, 271 feet. You're trying to get through one of these gaps on the right, most likely, to fade back towards the pin. The rough is plentiful here, so pick a straight disc that'll fade back. And that was looking perfect until it caught one of those last trees, which is exactly what Bill was saying there. Meanwhile, from the short tee, we've just got a kind of narrow gap on the right, and I mean, maybe there's a small gap to the left. I'm not sure. I guess if you're a lefty backhand, you might be able to flex something through there. I'm going with an R Pro Pig with a 6-sided disc stamp, of course. Just straight up the middle. And that should check up nicely, and it does. This this was Bill's best shot. I think the one that we saw still leaves him with a lot to do. And maybe just trying to do a little too much there from a kind of awkward stance, and that is going to fade out to the left a bit. Give him a tricky par cleanup here. And there's this tall little bush right behind the basket that I got just past it, which actually left me a pretty tricky putt for the birdie there. And that's a great putt from Bill. Bill's an excellent putter. Big thanks to him for coming out, and Rich as well for helping us film here today. Hole 9's a par 4 in the woods, the long tee, 376 feet. You're really just trying to get through this first gap on the right and penetrate down the fairway. This being a par 4, it's just all about getting distance through the woods. And that one was looking fantastic until it hit that last tree. I think Bill threw 3 shots and hit that same tree. So that's a big guardian tree. There's 2 fairways here from the short tee. You finally get to see this one on the left and the one on the right. The one on the left is much more open. The one on the right is a lot tighter, but does actually eventually go to the basket. Whereas this left side fairway, you eventually have to kind of throw through these trees. I'm starting with a turnover Prodigy F5 that gets a nice little turn before it fades back. And then I'm also going to try out a little thumber here. And I think this gets closer of the two. It's going to hit the ground, bounce off to the right. Cool little utility shot. Here's this right side fairway I was talking about. It's pretty congested, but it does lead straight to the basket. And that's where Bill ends up, and he elects to go for a high turnover, but that clips a branch and fades out left. And he's going to be looking at par at best from over there. And here's what I mean. Left side fairway, pin high, but I've got all these little trees to navigate. And that'll put me up there for a birdie putt. You can probably see why this is a par 4. It's extremely challenging to get anywhere near this basket for an eagle look. I think we missed Bill's upshot, but that was a great putt as well. Moving on to hole 10. Hole 10 from the long tee is another really challenging shot. It's only 250 feet, but you've got just trees everywhere. Maybe a flex forehand could get through there, or a low backhand kind of skip shot. I'm not sure. Bill's going to be looking up higher. There is some airspace up there, and I think that clips a late tree, but that got through pretty far. He's going to try a lower line. And that one was all right, not quite as far down the fairway. Here's our angle from the short tee, 184 feet. No out of bounds here in the woods. And there is probably a forehand or turnover line. I just wasn't really confident with it, so I'm going to take a couple backhand lines. And this being such a short hole, that shot actually left me with a decent outside look at a maybe circle 2 putt. And this is going to be a little turnover forehand with a fireball. And even after catching some branches, that gets within circle 1, I think. So, decent spot. These wooded holes are very wooded. Woo, and Bill very nearly throws that in from about 80 feet. That was a great toss. This is that first shot with the cacks, leaving me somewhere in circle 2, so I've at least got a look. Been working on a little jump putt. Not bad. Close. Solid cleanups here for a couple pars, maybe a birdie from my forehand shot. Not bad. And we're going to get back out in the open here, which means more out of bounds. So hole 11 is a par 3, 213 from the short, 305 from the long. You've got out of bounds blacktop on the right. You'd really have to shank a shot to get over to the blacktop, in my opinion. So I don't think that's going to come into play. Here's an alternate angle of the fairway from across the road there. And you can see there is a little hole in the woods there to reach the basket. And I believe we missed Bill's shot there from the long tee, but it's a very similar angle to the short tee, which is where we're going to see a couple of my shots here. First shot I'm going with is that same Latitude 64 Explorer. And this one I'm just trying to put up there and just kind of crash into the basket. There's so many trees, they should stop you from going deep. That one turned out pretty good. And then I'm going to go more straight at it with a Discmania MD3. And both of those are going to settle in circle 1, and it's a easy birdie putts from both. Bill's shot was a little bit deeper than mine, but still in a pretty good position. Just a tiny bit low on his putt. And once you get on this green, you should have a pretty easy cleanup for your birdie or your par. Not bad. We're on to hole 12, and we're on to the water holes. Lots of water to be had here on the back 9. From the long tee, it's 400 feet, and you've just got water and water and water. You're playing to the first peninsula straight ahead of you, or ideally past it and fading left into the fairway. We're going to see a couple of Bill's shots here, and we're filming from the bridge behind the tee. And that was a pretty good looking shot, though it might have straightened out and ended up in the water, and gets lucky and kicks down just behind the short tee. And same result here from a second shot. It's a tricky angle there from the long tee. And you've got to hang it out over the water again to get out to the basket. And that was really close. I'm not sure if that managed to make it inbounds or not. I think it might have ended up just on the edge of the grass there. Our short tee is just 245 feet. If you're confident with a straight tunnel shot that finishes right, you do have that, and that'll take the water out of play. But if you've got an overstable lefty forehand or righty backhand, my vote is to just rip it out there, try and get a good read on the wind, and let it crash down by the basket. And that one should end up within circle 1. This is the ideal landing zone from the long tee. It's maybe 50 feet in front of the short tee, and you still end up having to play a shot over the water from most positions on this hole. And that's a pretty solid shot there from Bill. With so much water in play, I would recommend bringing along extra discs. If you've got some favorites that your kind of go-to discs, make sure you bring extras. If you toss one of them in the water, you don't want to be missing, one of your putters. You don't want to be missing your go-to driver or something. It would definitely be on my mind. And Bill did sneak in bounds there from that drive. That's not bad. Moving on to hole 13, par 3 from the long tee, 237 feet. Short tee just 170, and you're trying to land on this small peninsula green. You've got out of bounds parking lot before it, out of bounds water very short, and out of bounds blacktop path and beyond. So you're looking at the inbounds area right here where you're trying to land, and it looks like they may paint a line there to help you out as well. Bill's playing a little overstable putter or mid-range, and that's a great little skip off the blacktop. This is really the biggest challenge I think on this hole is reading the wind. Again, you're throwing from a protected little tee pad, and you can't feel the wind out there. So if you happen to have a backup and you can see the players ahead of you playing, try and get a wind read if you can. From the short tee, I think you're just grabbing an approach disc, putter, whatever you're confident with, and just toss it up there. That one's a little bit wide, but inbounds. But let's be honest, it's a berg shot. Get your berg. You can't throw a berg long. 170 feet, no problem. Ooh, close. In the category of must-get birdies, this is probably one of them. Keep it in bounds, get you a birdie, pick up some strokes on people that get aggressive and go for the ace who end up out of bounds. On to hole 14, par 4, long tee, one of the longest holes on the course, 567 feet. We got out of bounds baseball field all along the right-hand side. You take it where it crossed and take a one-stroke penalty. But this is the perfect shot from Bill. One take wonder. Puts it right at the mouth of the gap you're trying to get down, which we can now see from the short tee. So Bill is right there in the middle of the fairway, and he's got a straight look down at the basket. And, you know, this being a par 4, I really think you should lay it up to this gap. In hindsight, I'm not going to do that, but I wish I did. Because this is a terrible mistake to make. Throwing off to the right here, you've just got 200 feet of trees between you and the basket. Absolutely nothing. So the better mistake is to go down the middle and end up left. At least then you can straddle out and get something. And Bill ends up with that same mistake again. It's not a terrible mistake to make to be on that left side. I think that's workable. It's manageable. And then Bill goes for maybe the much more aggressive play. And this one gets hung up in some trees. And that's going to drop down with really no look at the basket. So again, left side or down the middle is where you want to be. And I'm going to have to get creative on this left side to salvage anything out of this. Some kind of birdie look. We're going big overhand with the streamlined flare. And honestly, that's going so deep before that tree catches it. So I got super lucky, but left side's still better than the right. That's a nice upshot there from Bill. And a couple nice putts cleans us up on hole 14. Moving on to hole 15. No out of bounds here except for the water. So this baseball field and light pole and path and everything that you see is in bounds from the long tee. It's a very long hole, 535 feet. So the play is going to be to keep it right. You're trying to play a position shot to get you a view of the peninsula where the basket is from this long tee. And this looks overturned, and I think I initially thought it was out of bounds. But that is going to end up in bounds, hits the base of the pole and bounces back. And the real mistake that you can make here is this shot. Little nose up, you don't get it straight enough, and you fade off into these trees here. And now he's completely pinched off. There's no opportunity to advance towards the basket. And really all you can do from here is pitch it basically backwards away from the basket. And even then, you're not in a good position to attack the peninsula there. And this being a par 3, you're talking bogey, double bogey at best. None of the paths over there are out of bounds either, so you're just trying to get over onto the peninsula here. Here's our view from the short tee. Yeah, I'm going to start off with a Prodigy A1. A little bit fast, a little bit overstable, and that one skips just a little long. But I think probably the best play here is to just throw it straight at this tree above the basket, which is what I'm going to do with this Envy. Smack that tree. That drops down to within about 5 feet. All right, call it 10. And there you go. Easy birdie. And Bill's approach was a little short, but Bill's a great putter with a little bit of luck from the rim, and he's picking up a par there from a very challenging position. We're on hole 16 now, 272 feet. More water, that's your only out of bounds here, and another little peninsula. So clear the water, land in bounds is your goal for sure from the long tee. This one's looking a little too straight. And I don't know, that is going to be pretty close. If it's in bounds, it's a good shot. And this is another common mistake, not wanting to challenge the water. You fade off left into very, very thick brush. Here we are at the short tee, 223 feet. Water shouldn't really come into play unless you juice it long. So you're just trying to throw a shot down the middle. I'd say putter, mid-range, something like that. And I'm just going with a little flex shot with a Malta, slightly overstable. It's a little turn, little fade. And that is, I think, as parked as I'm going to get all day. Bill's shot that went into the woods there had absolutely nothing. Just had to pitch out. Easy birdie from the short tee. And it looks like Bill also got inbounds with that shot that hit the bank here. Gets to take a meter off the water, and that's an easy birdie from the long tee as well. Hole 17, on the other hand, is covered in out of bounds. We got out of bounds over the baseball fence on the right-hand side, which is certainly where a lot of your shots are going to be heading. If you do go over from the long tee pad, you have to re-tee from the drop zone, which is the short tee. All other divisions will take it where it went out of bounds, and that's the mistake right there. Bill threw it just a little too straight. And again, another protected green, no wind read from the green. So hopefully someone else is teeing before you. You can see what the wind does to their disc. And that one just got inbounds. It's a nice shot from Bill. Now the green here is really protected. It's straight ahead behind this pole, behind these trees, and it's got tall grass and all kinds of stuff on it. And I threw my lots and I immediately said, oh no, it's too far right, but it got picked up by this crosswind and pushed to within a foot of the basket. And you'll have to take my word for it, because we, for some reason, do not have the footage from our putts on this hole. So really, you're just going to be trying to crash into this green. It's a bit of a blind shot, and the closer you are, the better. And even within 10 feet, you could have an obstructed putt. So you've got, tall grass, short trees all around the basket. So it's really, really tricky. Good luck with that one. And we're on to the final hole, hole 18, par 3, 404 feet back here from the long tee. This is another out-of-bounds baseball field on your right. Take your drop where it went out of bounds and take yourself a one-stroke penalty. And you're aiming for this little protected green. Deep, lots of trees. Short, lots of trees. Really not a bad play to just end up out in the grass somewhere. And that's a pretty rough shot there. I think Bill got lucky in that kick down on the edge of the trees, but if that gets in there, you got nothing. And is that going to get in bounds? No. So this was a really tough one. I think Bill tried 4 or 5 different shots, and it was really difficult to hit the fairway. I think something slightly understable that gets some turn and throw it straight down the middle. Just get it in the grass. From the short tee, Bill said he wanted to try out my Explorer, and he is going to throw a beautiful shot with it, and that's coming right into the opening where the basket is, and should be about 10 feet past it. I'm trying out a couple shots here. I'm throwing an Enigma and a Latitude 64 Grace, and both of these I think are a little too long for this hole at 300 feet. These both ended up deep in the weeds a little bit. The Grace did get a little bit more fade. And a really common place to land here is just out in this grass on the other side of the path, which is in bounds. And at least you have an opening to pitch into for a birdie chance. Or, yeah, that's right, Bill, good shot with the Explorer. That would be a great birdie to close out your round on hole 18. And that is going to close out our preview of Hilliard and our preview of the Cap City Amateur Open, driven by Innova. We can't wait to see you there. Please stop by and see us at Tournament Central in Hilliard. Hopefully we'll be hanging out at the Shelter House by hole 1 there. And don't forget, we also have a raffle going on for a Simon Lizotte Meta Tilt $1 per ticket, drawing the winner on Sunday evening. So we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming by to see us, and good luck in the tournament. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Six Sided Discs to get more content from around Ohio. We appreciate your support.